Let me tell you about something that happened back in the fall of 1882, out in the Colorado Territory. I know this story because my grandmother Mary told it to me when I was just a girl, sitting on her porch swing while the summer crickets sang. She'd get this faraway look in her eyes, touching the simple gold band she never took off, and she'd say, "Child, sometimes the good Lord puts us exactly where we need to be, even when it seems like the worst place on earth." This is the story of how she met my grandfather, Elijah, though neither of them knew that's what was happening when it all began. It started with what looked like an ending, her lying broken by the side of the road, left for dead by men who wanted what her first husband had hidden. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell it proper, the way Grandma told it to me. The cottonwoods threw long shadows across the wagon road when Elijah Ransom spotted something that shouldn't have been there. His mare, Buttercup, steady as sunrise for 12 years, suddenly pulled sideways, nostrils flaring at something in the grass. "Easy, girl." His weathered hands kept the reins loose. After 38 years of living, 20 of them working cattle, he knew better than to ignore a horse's instincts. The shape wasn't a deer, wasn't a calf separated from the herd. The fabric, what was left of it, had once been blue calico, the kind his Sarah used to wear to church socials. But Sarah had been in the ground 2 winters now, and this wasn't Sarah. Blood had dried brown on the woman's temple. Her left eye was swollen shut, purple as prairie storm clouds. One shoe was missing, and her stockinged foot was scraped raw, like she'd been dragged. The mother-of-pearl buttons on her dress, fancy ones, store-bought, were half torn away. Elijah swung down from the saddle, his joints protesting after the long day in town. The woman's chest rose and fell, barely. When he knelt beside her, the smell hit him. Blood, yes, but also something else. Fear sweat. The kind that comes when a body knows it's about to die. Her lips moved. No sound at first, then a whisper that made his blood run cold. "Please, no more." He'd seen plenty in his years, cattle raids, bar fights, even helped bury the Henderson boy after the mine collapse. But something about this, a woman beaten and left like trash by the road, set his teeth on edge. The smart thing would be to ride to town, fetch the sheriff. But Sheriff Dobson was Brackenridge Mining's man, everybody knew it. And this woman, whoever she was, had the look of trouble. The kind of trouble that came from crossing the wrong people. Elijah looked up and down the road, empty as a church on Monday. The sun was dropping fast behind Pikes Peak, and the temperature would drop with it. She wouldn't last the night out here. Coyotes would find her first, or she'd simply stop breathing, another body the frontier swallowed without a trace. He made his decision. Getting her onto Buttercup took doing. The woman moaned when he lifted her, a sound that went straight through him. She weighed nothing, like a bird with hollow bones. Her head lolled against his chest as he mounted behind her, one arm holding her steady while the other took the reins. "Rose is going to have opinions about this," he muttered to Buttercup. The horse picked her way carefully down the trail, as if she understood her cargo was fragile. The ranch appeared in the distance, lamplight already glowing in the kitchen window. Rosa always lit the lamps at dusk, regular as clockwork. Sure enough, his housekeeper was on the porch before he'd even reached the gate, her sharp eyes taking in the situation. Rosa Gutierrez had worked the ranch for 6 years, since her own husband died in a flash flood. She'd seen enough trouble to recognize it coming. "Ay, Dios mío," she breathed, already rolling up her sleeves. "Bring her inside, quick now." The kitchen smelled of pork and beans, Rosa's Tuesday night supper. She swept the dishes aside, spreading a clean quilt on the table. Together, they laid the woman down, and in the lamplight, the damage was worse. Both eyes blackened, lip split, bruises on her throat in the shape of fingers. "Who is she?" Rosa asked, already heating water on the stove. "Don't know." Elijah stepped back, giving Rosa room to work. "Found her by Miller's Crossing. Left for dead." Rosa's hands moved quick and sure, checking for broken bones, cleaning wounds. She'd helped birth half the babies in the valley, set more broken bones than Doc Patterson in town. If anyone could help this woman, it was Rosa. "Mary," the woman whispered suddenly, eyes flying open. The one that could open, anyway. "Mary Morrison." The name hit Elijah like a physical blow. Morrison. He'd heard that name just this morning in town, buying supplies at Henderson's store. "Thomas Morrison's widow?" he asked carefully. Her good eye fixed on him, wide with terror. "They killed him. They killed Thomas, and now they want—" She tried to sit up, panicked. "The papers. They want the papers." Rosa pressed her back down, gentle but firm. "Hush now. You're safe." But Elijah saw the truth in Mary Morrison's battered face. She wasn't safe. None of them were. Not if she was carrying what he thought she was carrying, because Thomas Morrison had been the surveyor for Brackenridge Mining, and 3 days ago he died in what the company called an unfortunate accident at the number 3 shaft, the same shaft where 2 other men had died the month before. "Mrs. Morrison," Elijah said quietly. "What papers?" Her hand went to her boot, the one she still wore. Her fingers scrabbled at the leather, desperate. "Thomas said, if anything happened, trust no one except—" Her voice faded. Her eye rolled back. "She's fainted," Rosa said. "Good. She needs rest." She looked up at Elijah. "This is bad trouble you've brought home." "I know. Brackenridge's men will come looking." "I know that too." Rosa studied him for a long moment. "Then you better load that Winchester of yours and put the coffee on. It's going to be a long night." Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Dawn light filtered through unfamiliar curtains. Mary's good eye opened slowly, taking in the wooden beams above her head. Not her bedroom, not Thomas's house in town. The pillow smelled of lavender and lye soap, and something else. Sage, maybe. Her body felt wrong, heavy, hot. The quilt on top of her had a wedding ring pattern, hundreds of tiny stitches forming interlocking circles. Her mother had made one like it, back before. Male voices outside the door. Deep, close. Mary's breath caught. Her fingers clawed at the quilt, trying to sit up. Pain shot through her ribs like lightning. The room tilted. "Easy, easy." A woman appeared in the doorway. Not young, gray streaking her dark hair, hands rough from work but gentle as they pressed Mary back down. "You're safe, mija." Safe. The word meant nothing. Thomas had said they were safe too. "Where?" Mary's throat felt like sandpaper. The woman, Mexican by her accent, held a cup to Mary's lips. Water, cool and clean, with a hint of mint. "The Ransom Ranch. Mr. Elijah brought you here last night." The woman dipped a cloth in a basin, the water turning pink from dried blood. "I'm Rosa. I keep house here." The door. A man stood beyond it, just his shadow visible. Mary's whole body went rigid. "That's just Mr. Elijah," Rosa said, following her gaze. "He won't come in. Wanted to check you're awake is all." "Ma'am?" The voice was careful, respectful. "I need to know. Are there folks we should send word to? Family?" Family. Thomas's brother in Kansas, who hadn't written in 2 years. Her own parents, who'd disowned her for marrying beneath her station. "No," Mary whispered. "The men who did this." "No." Stronger now. She tried to sit again, fighting Rosa's hands. "I have to leave. Now, today." "You can barely stand," Rosa said firmly. "You don't understand," Mary's voice cracked. "They'll come here. They'll hurt you too. Everyone who helps me." She thought of Thomas, how they'd found him under the collapsed beams, his body broken beyond recognition. Only his pocket watch had identified him. Let them come. Elijah's shadow shifted. Been a while since anyone tried to push me around on my own land.
You don't know who they are, what they're capable of.
Victor Brackenridge's men. His voice was flat. I know exactly what they are. Mary's blood turned to ice water. He knew. How did he know?
You said his name, Rosa explained quietly. Last night, in your fever, said quite a few things.
Mary's hand flew to her boot, still there. The paper Thomas had sewn into the lining crinkled against her ankle. 3 days. That's how long it took before Mary could walk from the bed to the kitchen without her legs buckling. 3 days of Rosa's poultices and beef broth, of hearing Elijah's boots on the porch but never seeing him except as a shadow through curtains. The kitchen smelled of fresh biscuits and chicory coffee when she finally made it to breakfast. Real food, not the thin gruel she'd managed to keep down. Her stomach clenched with hunger. The first good sign, Rosa had said. Elijah sat at the pine table, back to the window. The Winchester leaned against the wall within arm's reach. It had been there yesterday too, she'd noticed, and the day before. Mrs. Morrison. He half stood as she entered, the chair legs scraping against the floor. Old manners, the kind her father would have approved of, back when he still acknowledged her existence.
Mr. Ransom.
She lowered herself into the ladder-back chair, careful of her ribs. They turned from purple to yellow-green, Rosa said. Healing, but tender. Rosa set a blue-patterned plate in front of her. Biscuits, butter, blackstrap molasses. The normalcy of it felt wrong somehow. Thomas should be here, complaining about the coffee being too weak, spreading too much butter while she fussed at him about his health. You need to eat, Rosa said, not unkindly. Strength first, talk later. The biscuit crumbled on Mary's tongue, butter rich and salty. She hadn't tasted anything this good since before. Before the funeral. Before the men came with their false sympathy and lying smiles. Elijah ate steadily, not watching her, but aware. She could feel his attention like heat from a stove. When she set down her third biscuit, finally full, he pushed his own plate aside.
Rosa told me you're Thomas Morrison's widow. Yes. The surveyor who died at number 3 Shaft. They murdered him.
The words dropped into the quiet kitchen like stones into water. Made it look like an accident, but Thomas knew those support beams. He'd inspected them the week before. Rosa crossed herself, lips moving in silent prayer. Elijah's face didn't change, but his fingers drummed once against the table. Why? Though his eyes said he already suspected. Mary reached down to her right boot. The leather was still stiff with dried mud and other things she didn't want to think about. Her fingers found the heel, twisted. It took 2 tries. Her hands weren't steady yet, but the false bottom finally gave.
Thomas was many things.
She pulled out the folded papers, sweat-stained and creased.
Stubborn, particular about his work, too trusting of people's good nature.
But he wasn't stupid. She spread the papers on the oilcloth that covered the table. Her hands shook slightly, not from weakness this time. 2 nights before he died, he came home late, later than usual. Sat at our kitchen table just like this and spread out his survey maps. She touched the first paper. This is what he filed with the territory office. Shows the Morrison Creek area, all the mineral deposits. Elijah leaned forward, studying the neat lines and notations in Thomas's precise handwriting. And this? He pointed to the second map, the real one, the one Thomas kept. Mary placed them side by side. Look at the widow Martinez's land, and the Henderson claim. Even Rosa could see it. The deposits had been moved, shifted to land already owned by Brackenridge Mining. Rich veins of silver shown as worthless rock on the official map.
Madre de Dios,
Rosa whispered. That's not all. Mary pulled out the next papers. Assay reports, 2 sets. Same ore samples, different results. The real ones show silver pure enough to make a man rich for life. The fake ones, she tapped the second set, worthless, not worth the cost of mining. So Brackenridge could buy the land cheap. Elijah's jaw had gone tight. After the accident started. Mary's finger traced the list Thomas had made. 7 names. 7 men dead in 2 months. Cave-ins. Equipment failures. Thomas started checking after the 4th death. Found saw marks on support beams. Bolts loosened on machinery. Someone's signature on inspection reports. For days, the inspector wasn't even at the mine. The kitchen had gone still. Even the clock seemed to pause between ticks. Thomas wrote it all down. She touched the final page. Every detail. What he found, when he found it, who was involved.
Elijah picked up the page, reading. His face went pale beneath the weathered tan. This says Judge McKenna signed off on the land transfers, and Sheriff Dobson was paid to look the other way. $500 a month. Mary's voice stayed flat. Facts were easier than feelings. Thomas traced the payments through the bank records. His friend worked there, helped him look. His friend still alive? No, bar fight 2 weeks ago. Knife in the back. Rosa had stopped even pretending to clean. She stood frozen, dishcloth in hand. The night before Thomas died, Mary continued, he sewed these papers into my boot. Told me if anything happened, I should take them to the federal marshal in Denver. Said not to trust anyone local. But you didn't make it to Denver. After the funeral, a man came. Said he was from the mining company, wanted to help the widow with Thomas's final pay. She pressed her palm flat on the table, stopping the tremor. I was grateful. Stupid and grateful. He said we'd stop at the bank first. But you didn't stop at the bank. 2 miles out of town, his friends were waiting. Her hand went to her throat, where the bruises had faded to green. They wanted Thomas's work papers, all his surveys, kept asking where he hid them. The coffee pot hissed on the stove. Rosa moved to tend it, her movements sharp. How did you get away? Elijah asked. I didn't. They got tired of asking questions. One of them said to finish it, dump me in the ravine. But Cole, the leader, said no. Said let the coyotes do it, make it look natural. She attempted something like a smile. They didn't check my boots. City men. Probably never had a hiding spot in their lives. Elijah gathered the papers carefully, as if they might crumble. These are enough to hang Victor Brackenridge. Or get us all killed before we can use them. Mary stood, legs unsteady. That's why I have to leave. Tonight, if possible. You've been kind, but... Sit down, Mrs. Morrison. Elijah's voice had gone hard. You're not going anywhere. You can't keep me here. I'm not keeping you. I'm keeping you alive. He stood, the chair scraping back. Rosa, we'll need supplies from town. Tell people Mrs. Morrison left yesterday, heading south. Make sure everyone hears it. And the papers? Mary asked. First we make copies. Every word, every line. He walked to a drawer, pulled out fresh paper and a steel nib pen. Then we figure out who we can trust. Thomas said not to trust anyone. Thomas was right. But he didn't know Sam Hayes. The newspaper man? Lost his nephew in the number 3 shaft. Been asking questions ever since. Elijah spread fresh paper on the table. If anyone will help us get these to the right people, it's Hayes. Mary watched him prepare to copy the documents. His hands were steady, methodical, the kind of hands that built things, fixed things, protected things. Mr. Ransom, she said quietly, why are you doing this? He looked up, and for the first time, she saw something broken in his eyes, something that recognized the broken parts in her. Because some things need to be made right, he said simply. And because... He stopped, looked away. Because I'm tired of men like Brackenridge thinking they own everything, including who lives and who dies. Mary picked up another pen. If they were going to copy everything, they'd need 2 hands working. As she dipped the nib in ink, she noticed something else in Thomas's papers. Something she hadn't seen before. A name at the bottom of the last page, written in pencil so faint she'd missed it. Governor Patterson. The territorial governor himself was involved.
She looked up to find Elijah watching her, seeing the recognition in her face. "It goes higher than Brackenridge," she said. "How high?" She pushed the paper across to him, pointing to the name. Elijah set down his pen very carefully. "Well," he said quietly, "that changes things." The lye soap bit into Mary's palms. She scrubbed Elijah's work shirt against the washboard ridges, water sloshing over the rim of the wooden tub. Her hands had gone soft in town. Thomas made good money, enough for a woman to come do the washing. Now the harsh soap found every crack, every tender spot. "You don't need to do this," Rosa said from the porch, arms full of dried beans for sorting. "I can't sit idle." Mary wrung the shirt hard, water streaming onto the packed dirt. Her ribs pulled with the motion, but the pain felt clean, honest. "Please." Rosa studied her, dark eyes seeing more than Mary wanted to show. Then she nodded, setting down the beans. "Hot water for washing, cold for rinsing. Don't use too much soap, we make it last." The October sun beat down on Mary's neck. Sweat trickled between her shoulder blades, soaking through the borrowed dress. Brown wool, practical, nothing like the blue silk Thomas had bought her for their 5th anniversary. That dress was probably ash now, burned with everything else she'd left behind. Rosa emerged from the root cellar with mason jars of last year's preserves, pickled beets, green beans, corn relish. She set them on the makeshift table they'd pulled outside for washing day. "Your hands will toughen," Rosa said, noticing Mary's wince as she grabbed another shirt. "Takes time." Time. Something she might not have. But for now, for this morning, she had wash to do. The rhythm settled into her bones. Wet, soap, scrub, rinse, wring. Her mother had done this, back before Father's store succeeded. Mary remembered watching those red, chapped hands work the board. Remembered promising herself she'd marry well enough to never need to. Thomas had given her soft hands, and now Thomas was dead. "Need help with those beans?" Mary asked, hanging the last shirt on the line stretched between 2 posts. "You know how to sort beans?" "I can learn." They sat in the shade of the porch, fingers picking through dried pintos. Stones and broken beans went into one bowl, good beans into another. Simple work, the kind that let a body think, or not think. Elijah appeared from the barn, axe over his shoulder. He'd been splitting wood since dawn. She'd heard the steady thwack, thwack through her window. He paused at the pump, working the handle until water gushed out. He ducked his whole head under the stream, coming up, gasping, water darkening his shirt collar. When he straightened, their eyes met across the yard. He nodded, just once, then headed to the woodpile. "He's a good man," Rosa said quietly, fingers never stopping their sorting. Mary said nothing. "His wife, Sarah, she was my friend. Taught me English when I first came here." Rosa found a stone, flicked it aside. "When the fever took her, he sat by her bed 3 days straight. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. Just held her hand and talked to her, even after she couldn't hear anymore." The beans blurred in Mary's vision. She blinked hard, focusing on the sorting. "After, he wanted to die too. I could see it." Rosa's voice stayed matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. "But he kept working, sunrise to past dark. Like if he stopped moving, he'd disappear." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you have the same look. The one that says breathing hurts." Mary's hands stilled on the beans. "It does." "I know." Rosa covered Mary's hand briefly, her palm rough but warm. "But it gets easier. Not better. Easier." They worked in silence until the beans were done. Then Rosa taught her to make bread, real bread, from starter kept in a crock that Rosa's mother had begun 40 years ago. The smell was sharp, alive, nothing like the bakery loaves in town. "Feel the dough," Rosa instructed. "When it's ready, it feels like an earlobe." Mary kneaded,
the rhythm different from washing but equally soothing. Push, fold, turn. Push, fold, turn. Flour rose in small clouds, coating her wrists white. The dough resisted at first, sticky and uncooperative, then slowly transformed under her palms. A tune rose in her throat, one of Thomas's favorites, something about a girl waiting by the river.
She hummed without thinking, the melody filling the warm kitchen. The humming stopped. Mary's hands froze on the dough. Rosa kept working at the stove, stirring something that smelled of onions and pork fat. "That's pretty. What song?" I don't remember the name." Mary returned to kneading, but the melody had died. Supper was quiet. They ate Rosa's beans and fresh bread, Elijah at the head of the table, Mary to his right, Rosa across from her. The empty chair, Sarah's chair, Mary assumed, had been pushed back from the table, but not removed. When full dark came, Elijah stood. "I'll be on the porch if anyone needs anything." Mary helped Rosa clear the dishes, then found herself following him outside. He sat in one of two rockers, boots up on the rail, coffee cup balanced on the arm of the chair. She took the other rocker. The woven seat creaked under her weight. Stars were just beginning to show, pinpricks of light in fabric stretched too thin. "Thomas loved stars," she said without planning to. "Said they were honest. Same ones every night, right where they should be." "Sarah planted morning glories along this rail." Elijah's voice came quiet in the darkness. "Said the porch needed softening. They died the winter she did. Haven't had the heart to replant them." A coyote called from the hills. Another answered. The sound raised goosebumps along Mary's arms, despite the wool shawl Rosa had given her. "How long were you married?" Elijah asked. 7 years. "We had 12. No children, though we tried." He lifted the coffee cup, set it down without drinking. "You?" "No. Thomas said we had time." The words caught in her throat. Funny how we always think we have time. They sat with that truth between them, heavy as the darkness. Inside, Rosa moved about the kitchen, the honey sounds of an evening routine, water heating for washing up, the clank of the stove door closing. "I should go in," Mary said. "Rest well, Mrs. Morrison." She stood, then paused at the door. "Mary, just Mary is fine." "Then I'm just Elijah." She nodded and went inside. In her room, the guest room, she reminded herself, she lay listening to the house settle. Every creak made her heart race. Every shadow could be Cole and his men come to finish what they'd started. Sleep came in fragments. Thomas at his desk, marking survey maps with his careful hand, the weight of rough hands on her arms, dragging her from the wagon, dirt in her mouth, the taste of her own blood. The scream tore from her throat before she was fully awake. She sat up, nightgown soaked with cold sweat, hands gripping the quilt. Footsteps in the hall, measured, not rushing. They stopped outside her door. "You're all right, Mary." Elijah's voice, low and steady through the pine boards. "You're at the ranch. You're safe." Her breath came in gasps. I'm sorry. I woke everyone." "Nothing wrong with bad dreams. We all have them." She heard him shift, maybe leaning against the wall. "Door's locked from your side," he continued. "Nobody can get in unless you let them. I'll be in the kitchen for a bit, if you need anything." His footsteps retreated, but she knew he'd keep his word. He'd sit in that kitchen with his rifle until dawn, watching. When morning came, gray and slow, Mary dressed and made her way to the kitchen. On the table beside her plate sat a small jar filled with water. 3 wildflowers, prairie roses, pink as dawn, stood in it. Their stems had been cut clean and every thorn carefully removed. Her finger found the tiny wounds on the stems where patient hands had worked. Rosa poured coffee, her face revealing nothing about who had picked the flowers. Elijah had already gone to the barn, Rosa said. Chores to do. Mary touched one of the petals, soft as worn cotton, and wondered how long it had been since anyone had thought to bring her flowers. Even Thomas, dear as he was, had considered such things foolish. She was still looking at them when hoofbeats pounded up the road, fast, urgent. Not one horse, but several. Rosa's hand went to the shotgun by the door. "Get to the root cellar." But Mary recognized the lead rider as he came into view. Sam Hayes, from the newspaper. His derby hat gone, his usually neat clothes covered in dust. "They burned it," he called out before he'd even stopped his horse. "The print shop. Everything's gone." Elijah took the north trail into town, adding 3 miles but keeping off the main road. His mare picked her way through the sandstone formations, hooves clicking against red rock. The oilskin pouch pressed against his ribs under his vest, papers crinkling with each shift in the saddle. The town spread below him in the valley, 24 buildings clustered around Main Street like beetles around spilled sugar. Smoke rose straight up from chimneys in the still morning air. No wind meant sound would carry. He'd need to be careful. He tied the mare behind Henderson's feed store, 2 streets over from the newspaper office. Let folks think he'd come for fence wire or grain. His boots raised small clouds of dust as he walked, keeping his pace unhurried. Mrs. Garrett nodded from her boarding house porch, broom pausing in its sweep. "Morning, Mr. Ransom." "Ma'am," Jim Anders called out from the blacksmith shop, hammer ringing against iron. "That bay mare throwing shoes again?" "Not today, just picking up supplies." Normal conversation. Normal rancher in town for normal business. Nothing worth remembering or repeating. The newspaper office door stood propped open with a chunk of type metal. The smell hit him first. Ink sharp enough to sting his nose, machine oil, paper, and something else. Whiskey, maybe, though it was barely past noon. Inside, the Washington hand press dominated the room like a locomotive that had crashed through the wall and decided to stay. Black iron gleaming with oil, brass fittings polished to mirror brightness. Samuel Hayes hunched over a type case, back to the door, plucking letters with stained fingers. "We're closed for lunch," Hayes said without turning. "Came to discuss buying advertisement space." Hayes's hands went still. He set down his composing stick slowly, wiping his fingers on the leather apron tied around his waist. When he turned, the left side of his face caught the light, old burn scars that pulled his eye into a permanent squint, courtesy of a Confederate shell at Antietam. "That's so." Hayes studied him. "Selling cattle?" "Thinking about it." They looked at each other across the cluttered office. Proof sheets hung from lines like laundry. Stacks of newspapers towered against the walls, dating back years. The place smelled like history and truth, if truth had a smell. "Better discuss that in private." Hayes moved toward a door at the back. "More comfortable in the office." The back room was cramped, a desk buried under papers, 2 chairs, and towers of old newspapers that reached the ceiling. Hayes closed the door and pulled the window shade down halfway. Enough to block the view from the street, not enough to look suspicious. "Show me." Elijah pulled out the oilskin pouch, unwrapping it carefully. The papers spread across the desk, covering wanted notices and old advertisements. Hayes leaned forward, his good eye scanning Thomas Morrison's neat handwriting. The survey maps came first. Hayes traced the ore deposits with one finger, comparing the 2 versions. His breathing changed, becoming shallow and quick. Good Lord in heaven. The assay reports were next. Hayes held them up to the window light, studying the ink, the signatures, the way the numbers had been changed. "That's Frank Baxter's ore sample," he said quietly, "from the widow Martinez's land. I remember because Frank brought me a piece, proud as a new father. Said it would make them all rich." "What happened to Frank?" "Cave-in, 2 months ago." Hayes set the papers down with excessive care, like they might explode. "Number 3 shaft. Same as Morrison. Same as my nephew Nathan." Hayes picked up Thomas's list of names, 7 dead miners with dates beside them. His finger stopped at the fifth name. Nathan Hayes, 19 years old. My sister's boy. The clock on the wall ticked through the silence. Outside, a wagon rolled past, wheels groaning under a heavy load. Nathan wrote me the week before he died, Hayes continued. Said something felt wrong at the mine. Support beams that looked new were already showing rot. Bolts coming loose on equipment that had just been serviced. Morrison found saw marks on the beams. Someone cut them partway through. Hayes's hand formed a fist, knuckles white. I knew it. I knew something stank. Beams don't rot in dry mountain air. Not that fast. He stood and walked to the window, looking through the gap below the shade. Main Street looked peaceful. A dog slept in the shade of the water trough. Mrs. Henderson swept her store's front steps with methodical strokes. If we publish this, Brackenridge will come for us both. I know. He's got Judge McKenna in his pocket. Sheriff Dobson, too. Morrison knew that. It's why his widow was trying to reach the federal marshal in Denver. Hayes turned back. James Cartwright? You know him? Served under him in the war. He's straight as they come. Hayes moved to his desk, pulling out a sheet of letterhead. But even Cartwright will need more than papers. He'll need testimony, witnesses. Mrs. Morrison will testify. If she lives that long. Hayes dipped his pen in ink. Where is she? Elijah said nothing. Smart. Hayes nodded. Don't tell me. What I don't know, I can't reveal. His pen moved across the paper in quick, sure strokes. I'll write to Cartwright today. Send it with tomorrow's stage. What about the newspaper? Can't publish yet. Not until we have protection. Hayes folded the letter, reaching for sealing wax. But I can prepare. Make printing plates that can run fast when the time comes. The red wax dripped onto the fold. Hayes pressed his seal into it, a simple H surrounded by stars. We'll need a signal system, Hayes continued. If I need to reach you urgently, I'll run an advertisement. Lost dog, black with white spots. You see that? You come at night, back entrance. And if Brackenridge's men come for you? Hayes smiled, the scars pulling his face into something that would frighten children. I survived Confederate artillery, Mr. Ransom, and I've got a Spencer rifle in the back that's seen me through worse than mining thugs. He gathered the papers, studying them again. These stay with you for now, safer that way. But when it's time, I'll need them. Elijah returned them to the oilskin pouch, tucking it back under his vest. The weight felt heavier now, knowing what they meant. There's something else, Hayes said. The governor's name is on these papers. I saw. Patterson's up for re-election next year. He won't let this come out. Hayes walked Elijah to the door, checking the street first. Watch your back, then watch the widow. They'll figure out where she is eventually. Elijah left through the front, stopping at Henderson's to buy fence wire he didn't need. The coil sat heavy on his shoulder as he walked back to his horse. Normal rancher, normal day. He took the main road home this time. Let people see him returning with supplies. The sun beat down on his back, shirt sticking to his skin with sweat. Every rider in the distance made his hand drift toward the Winchester in his saddle scabbard. Mary stood at the kitchen window when he rode up, her silhouette appearing and disappearing as she paced. Rosa emerged from the garden to take his horse, her eyes asking questions her mouth wouldn't voice. Inside, Mary had worn a path in the floor, her fingers twisted in her apron, knuckles white. The bruises on her face had faded to yellow-green, but her eyes still held that haunted look. Well, Hayes will help. He's writing to the federal marshal today. Her shoulders sagged. She sank into a chair, hands flat on the table. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. That's a long time to hide. It's what we have. Mary stood and walked to the stove, lifting the coffee pot. The liquid sloshed as she poured, her hands shaking. There's something else, she said quietly, not meeting his eyes. Another paper. One I didn't show you." Elijah set down his cup. "Thomas wrote a letter, the night before he died, to me." She reached into her skirt pocket, pulling out a folded sheet. "He named names, not just Brackenridge." She handed him the letter. Elijah unfolded it, his eyes scanning the first lines. The blood drained from his face as he read. "Mary." His voice came out strangled. "This says the territorial governor is involved. Patterson himself." "I know." "And the federal judge in Denver. Morrison says he took bribes." "I know that too." Elijah set the letter down carefully. "This changes everything. We can't trust anyone in the territory government." Thomas knew that. "Look at the bottom."
Elijah read the last line, written in pencil so faint he almost missed it. "Trust only Cartwright. He knows." "Cartwright already knows?" Mary nodded. "Thomas wrote to him months ago, sent copies of some documents." "Then why hasn't he acted?" "Thomas asked him to wait, to gather more evidence." Her voice caught. "He was supposed to have more time." Through the window, dust rose on the north road. Riders approaching. 3, maybe 4. Rosa appeared in the doorway, shotgun in hand. "Company coming." The dust cloud rose from the north road like smoke from a distant fire. Mary set down the jar of blackberry preserves she'd been filling, purple juice staining her fingers. Through the kitchen window, the cloud grew larger, taking shape. 3 riders, maybe 4, moving steady but not hurried. The preserving jar slipped from her hand. Glass exploded across the pine floor. Purple spread outward like spilled blood, the sweet smell of crushed berries filling her nose. Syrup seeped into the cracks between boards. "Root cellar, now." Elijah's voice cut through the kitchen. He didn't look at her, eyes fixed on the approaching riders. "Don't argue." Mary's legs moved before her mind caught up. Rosa already had the shotgun down from above the door, breaking it open to check the shells. The older woman's face had gone flat, unreadable as stone. "Go," Rosa said. The cellar door sat flush with the kitchen floor, hidden under the braided rag rug Mary had helped repair yesterday. Her fingers found the iron ring, pulled. The hinges groaned. They needed oil, she'd meant to tell Elijah. Wooden steps descended into darkness that smelled of damp earth and pickled vegetables. Her boots found each step by memory. She'd been down here every day this week, helping Rosa organize the preserves for winter. 3rd step creaked. 5th had a splinter on the left side. 7 steps total, then packed earth floor. The door closed above her. Darkness complete except for thin lines of light between the floorboards. She pressed against the stone wall, its cold seeping through her dress. The preserving shelves pressed against her shoulders. Tight space, barely room to turn around. Glass jars caught what little light filtered through. Row after row. Pickled beets, corn relish, green beans. Rosa's careful work, food for the winter ahead, if they lived that long. Boots moved across the floor above. Elijah's measured stride toward the door. Rosa's lighter step to the window. Horses approached the house. Leather creaked as riders shifted in saddles. Spurs jangled against stirrups. 3 distinct patterns of breathing. One wheezed slightly, like a man who smoked too much. Another cleared his throat and spat. The 3rd breathed quiet and steady. "Afternoon, Ransom." The voice carried through the floor, deep, pleasant, almost friendly. Cole Hutchins. She recognized it from that day on the road, though her memory of it came wrapped in pain. Cole. Elijah's response came from near the door, not outside yet, waiting. "Long ride from town in this heat. Business brings us out. Mind if we water the horses?" "Trough is there." Boots hit the ground. The horses snorted and shifted, hooves stirring dust. Through the cracks, Mary saw shadows move as the men led their animals to water, taking their time, making Elijah wait, making him wonder. "Nice place you got here," Cole said. His voice came closer now,
probably at the porch steps. "Must get lonely, though. Just you and the Mexican woman." "I manage." "Sure you do. Men like you, work this land, what, 20 years? Deserve some peace and quiet." A pause. Tobacco juice hit something metal. The brass spittoon on the porch, the one Sarah had bought from a traveling salesman. Elijah had told that story 2 nights ago, almost smiling at the memory. "Funny thing happened in town," Cole continued. "Woman disappeared. Just up and vanished after her husband's funeral." "That's so." "Widow Morrison. Pretty little thing, they say. Brown hair, about 5.5 feet, green eyes." Boot heels climbed the porch steps, each board creaking under the weight. "Thought maybe you'd seen her. You know, passing through." "I see lots of things on the road. Mind my own business, though." Cole laughed. The sound had no humor in it, like rocks grinding together. "Smart man. Minding your own business keeps a man healthy, keeps his property safe." The doorknob rattled. Mary's fingers dug into the stone wall, nails scraping. Above her, Elijah's boots shifted. She heard the whisper of metal on wood, the Winchester, probably, being lifted. "That's close enough." The rattling stopped. Through the cracks, shadows moved. Elijah must have stepped onto the porch. She knew he had the rifle with him now, though probably held casual-like, not quite threatening. "Now, no need for unfriendliness," Cole said. The pleasant tone was gone. "Just worried about the widow is all. Dangerous country for a woman alone. All sorts of accidents can happen." "Like what happened to her husband?" Silence. Even the horses stopped moving. Mary counted heartbeats. 5, 10, 15. "Cave in," Cole said finally. "Tragic accident. Those old support beams, you know how they get. Rot sets in. No one notices until too late. Funny how beams rot so fast in dry mountain air." "Funny things happen all the time, Ransom. Why, just last month, the Henderson place caught fire. Middle of the night. Whole barn went up before anyone could do anything." Rose's shadow passed the cellar door. The shotgun would be in her hands, both barrels loaded with buckshot. "I remember," Elijah said. "Also remember Henderson sold his land to Brackenridge the next week. Below market value. Man's got to do what's best for his family." Cole's boots moved across the porch. The boards groaned under his weight. "Speaking of family, how is Rosa?" "Fine woman. Hard worker. Be a shame if something happened to her." "You threatening my people, Cole?" "Just observing. Lot of accidents lately. That Morrison fellow, for instance, made the mistake of poking around where he shouldn't. Writing things down, making maps." A pause. Course, his widow probably don't know nothing about that. Women don't understand such things. Probably not. Still, Mr. Brackenridge wants to make sure she's taken care of. Proper compensation for her loss. Help her get settled somewhere far away. California maybe, or back east. Somewhere safe. Generous of him. Mr. Brackenridge is a generous man. To his friends. Cole's voice hardened. Not so much to folks who cause problems. One of the other men spoke up, younger voice, eager. "Boss, maybe we should check the—" "Shut your mouth, Willie." Cole's tone could have frozen water in July. "Mr. Ransom's a reasonable man. Aren't you, Ransom?" "Reasonable enough?" "Good. Then you'll let us know if you see the widow, before someone else gets hurt." "I'll keep my eyes open." "You do that." Boot heels moved toward the steps. "Oh, one more thing. That surveying equipment Morrison used, transit, chains, all that, seems to have gone missing from his office. You haven't seen anything like that, have you?" "Can't say I have." Well, if you do, Mr. Brackenridge would pay good money for its return. Sentimental value, you understand." The men mounted their horses. Leather creaked, bits jangled. They sat there for a long moment. Mary counted to 30, then 60. Still, they waited. "Nice ranch you got here," Cole said finally. "Nice barn, too. All that dry wood, all that hay stored for winter. Be a real shame if something sparked. Fire spreads so fast out here. Sometimes a whole place can burn before anyone even notices. I'll bear that in mind. You do that, Ransom."
You think real hard about what's worth protecting and what ain't. The horses moved off, but slow, walking pace. Mary stayed pressed against the wall, legs trembling. Sweat ran down her back despite the cellar's chill. The berry juice smell from the broken jar seemed too sweet now, making her stomach turn. Time stretched. Rosa moved around the kitchen, glass crunching under her boots. The sound of sweeping, the clink of shards dropping into a bucket. "Wait," Elijah said through the floorboards. "Not yet." She pressed against the wall harder, counting breaths. 100, 200.
Her legs cramped from standing still. "All right." The cellar door lifted. Light flooded down, making her eyes water. She climbed the steps on unsteady legs, gripping the edges for balance. The kitchen seemed too bright, too exposed. Elijah stood at the window, watching the road. Dust still hung in the air from the rider's departure. The Winchester rested in the crook of his arm, his finger near the trigger guard. "They'll be back," he said without turning. Rosa swept glass into a pile, movements sharp and angry. "Should have shot them when we had the chance." "Not yet. Need to be smarter than that." Mary sank into a chair. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The berry juice had dried on her fingers, dark as old blood. "They know I'm here." "They suspect." Elijah turned from the window. "That's different from knowing." "Cole's no fool," Rosa said. She dumped the glass shards into a bucket with unnecessary force. "He'll figure it out." "Maybe, but he won't move without Brackenridge's order. We bought ourselves a few days." "For what? Hayes to write his letter?" Elijah set the rifle against the wall, within easy reach. "For the federal marshal to get here." "And if he doesn't come in time?" Elijah didn't answer. He walked to the door, studying the yard through the screen. Everything looked normal. Chickens pecking in the dirt, horses drowsing in the corral. But Mary saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand stayed close to his sidearm. "There's something else," he said quietly. "In Cole's saddlebag." When he mounted up. "What?" "A surveyor's transit. Brass and wood, well made." He turned to look at Mary. "The kind Thomas would have used." The rider came at sunset, his horse lathered white with foam. Mary watched from the kitchen window as he slid from the saddle, legs barely holding his weight. Dust caked his face, except where sweat had carved channels through the dirt. "Message for Mr. Ransom." The boy couldn't be more than 16. His voice cracked on the words. Elijah emerged from the barn, wiping axle grease from his hands with a rag. He took the folded paper, breaking the seal with his thumb. His eyes moved across the words. The rag fell from his fingers into the dirt. "When?" "Last night. Mr. Hayes said to tell you." The boy swayed on his feet. Rosa caught his elbow, steering him to the porch steps. "Sit. Water first." She disappeared inside. Elijah handed the message to Mary. The paper felt rough against her fingertips, cheap newsprint torn from a larger sheet. Hayes's handwriting slanted across it, ink splattered in his haste. "Press destroyed, type cases overturned, 3 men, maybe 4. Didn't see faces. Starting over, but will take time. Be careful." The words blurred. Mary read them again. The printing press, that beautiful machine that had dominated Hayes's office, destroyed. Rosa returned with a pitcher and cup. The boy drank in long gulps, water running down his chin. When he could speak again, his words came out steadier. "They came after midnight. Mr. Hayes was sleeping upstairs, heard the crash, came down to find them with sledgehammers." The boy wiped his mouth with his sleeve. "The Washington press, they beat it to pieces, just pieces." "Anyone hurt?" Elijah's voice stayed flat. "Mr. Hayes got cut on his arm from the broken type metal. Nothing serious. But the press..." The boy shook his head. "Took him 15 years to pay for that press." "The papers, the ones I gave him?" "Still has those. Had them upstairs." The boy stood, legs steadier now. "He said to tell you he's not giving up. Has another plan, but needs time." "How much time?" "Didn't say."
Elijah pulled coins from his pocket, pressing them into the boy's palm. "You didn't come here. You don't know where Mrs. Morrison is. Understand?" The boy nodded, remounted his tired horse, and disappeared down the road as darkness swallowed them both. Mary walked into the house without speaking. Her feet carried her to the guest room. She still thought of it that way, even after 2 weeks. Her hands moved on their own, pulling the carpet bag from under the bed. The brass clasps opened with sharp clicks. She folded the dresses Rosa had lent her, the blue calico for every day, the brown wool for town.
Each one handled with care, smoothed flat, corners aligned. Her own dress, the one she'd worn from town, torn and blood-stained, lay crumpled in the corner. She left it there. The door opened behind her. She didn't turn. "What are you doing?" Elijah's voice came quiet. "Leaving. First light." "Mary, I bring death." The words scraped her throat raw. "Thomas, those miners, now Hayes's livelihood." She placed her hairbrush in the bag, the silver-backed one Thomas had given her for their 5th anniversary. "Everyone who helps me gets hurt." "That's not, it is." She spun to face him. "You have this ranch, this life you've built. Rosa has a home here. I won't let Brackenridge take that." She turned back to the bag. Her spare stockings went in next, darned where she'd caught them on a nail in the barn. The small sewing kit Rosa had given her. Everything she owned in the world fit in one carpet bag with room to spare. Wood scraped against wood. Elijah had pulled out the desk chair, sitting down heavy. The lamp on the dresser threw his shadow across the wall, all angles and darkness. "Sarah died December 12th, 2 years ago." His voice came out rough, like words pulled over broken glass. Mary's hands stilled on the bag. "Influenza came through the valley like wildfire. 6 people in a week. Sarah was the last." His boots shifted against the floor. "Doc Patterson couldn't do anything but watch her burn up with fever while I held her hand and prayed to God to take me instead." The clock in the hall marked seconds with its brass heartbeat. "After the funeral, I kept working, sunrise to past dark, mending fence, breaking horses, anything to keep moving." He cleared his throat. "Rosa tried to help, made food I couldn't taste, talked when I couldn't answer. Some nights I slept in the barn because the house felt like a tomb." Mary sank onto the bed. The rope supports creaked under her weight. "First month I planned to sell. Brackenridge had been after me to sell for years. Good offer, too. Had the papers drawn up." A sound that might have been a laugh, but bitter. "Rosa hid them. Took me 3 days to find them in the root cellar under the pickled beets. By then the urge had passed." "That's different." "Is it?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "House got so quiet I started talking to the cattle, to the horses, to myself, just to hear a human voice, even if it was my own." Mary pressed her palms against her eyes. "This is different. People want me dead." "People wanted Sarah dead too, in a way. The fever did their work for them." His voice dropped. "But you're here. Alive. Fighting." "I'm not fighting. I'm running." "From what? From Brackenridge?" He stood, chair legs scraping. "Or from the fact that you're still breathing when Thomas isn't?" The words hit like a physical blow. Mary's hands dropped to her lap. "That's not... You don't understand." "I understand plenty." He moved closer, but kept distance between them, stopping at the window. "Every morning you wake up and he's still dead. Every night you go to bed knowing tomorrow won't change that. Food has no taste, sun has no warmth. You're going through the motions of living while feeling like you died too." Tears burned her eyes. She blinked them back hard. "But then something changes," he continued. "Someone needs help. There's work to do, a purpose again. And suddenly you remember what your own voice sounds like when it's not just echoing in empty rooms." "Elijah, you brought noise back to this house." He turned from the window. You and Rosa talking in the kitchen. You humming while you work. Yes, I hear it. Footsteps that aren't mine. Doors opening and closing. Signs of life. That's not worth dying for, isn't it? They faced each other across the small room. The lamp flickered, making shadows dance on the walls. You leave now. This house goes back to being a tomb. I go back to disappearing, one day at a time. His hands clenched at his sides. I was halfway gone when I found you by that road. Halfway to being nothing but a ghost who happened to own land. You don't owe me anything. This isn't about owing. He moved to the door, hand on the frame. It's about choosing to fight instead of fade. With you here, I remember why that matters. The door closed behind him. Mary sat on the bed, staring at the half-packed carpet bag. Through the thin walls, she heard him moving through the house, not going to bed, going to the kitchen. She knew he'd sit there all night with his rifle, watching the road. The silver hairbrush caught the lamplight. She picked it up, running her thumb over the engraved initials. N.M. Mary Morrison. The woman she'd been. The woman she still was, even with Thomas gone. She stood and walked to the door. The hallway stretched dark except for the yellow light spilling from the kitchen. Her bare feet made no sound on the cool wood floors. Elijah sat at the table, rifle across his knees, coffee cup at his elbow. He looked up when she entered, but said nothing. The pamphlets, Mary said. Hayes mentioned pamphlets. Hand-printed, small ones. Distributed all at once so Brackenridge can't stop them. How many? Hundreds, maybe more. Every house, every business, every church. Too many to collect, too many to burn. Mary pulled out a chair and sat down. We'd need help. People we trust. Hayes has friends, other families who lost men in the mines. And if Brackenridge finds out before we're ready, then we fight harder. She reached across the table. His hand met hers halfway, calloused and warm. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I. His thumb traced across her knuckles. But I'm more scared of doing nothing, of letting them win. Thomas would have liked you. Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't matter now. He squeezed her hand gently, then let go. What matters is making his death count for something. Through the window, the first gray light of dawn touched the mountains. Another day coming, ready or not. I'll unpack, Mary said. Good. She stood to go, then paused at the doorway. Elijah? Thank you for telling me about Sarah. Needed saying. Back in her room, she pulled Thomas's letter from her pocket, the one with all the names, all the accusations. At the very bottom, below his signature, she'd noticed something new. Or maybe she'd just been ready to see it. Written in pencil, so faint she'd missed it before. J.C. knows all. Ready to move when proof arrives. J.C. James Cartwright, the federal marshal. He'd been waiting for something, waiting for proof. Mary folded the letter carefully. They had the proof. Now they just needed to stay alive long enough to use it. 3 a.m. No moon, just stars scattered across black cloth. Mary pressed her face against the kitchen window, watching for the signal. The ranch sat in complete darkness, no lamplight, no fire in the stove, just waiting. A match flared near the corral, once, twice, 3 times. That's it. Elijah pulled on his coat. Hayes is ready. 2 weeks had passed since the press was destroyed. 2 weeks of secret meetings, careful planning, and hand-copying Thomas's evidence until their fingers cramped. Now 20 men waited throughout the valley, each with a stack of pamphlets wrapped in oilcloth. Rosa checked the loads in the shotgun. You should stay here. Can't. Need to be seen at home when the town wakes up. Elijah picked up his rifle. If anyone asks, I've been here all night. Sick horse. Mary followed him to the door. Her fingers caught his sleeve. Be careful. His hand covered hers briefly, warm and steady. Then he was gone, boots silent on the porch boards. She heard his horse moving away, but slow, walking pace. No hurry. No sound to wake curious neighbors. The waiting began. Mary sat at the table with Rosa. Neither spoke. The clock's brass heartbeat filled the kitchen. 4 o'clock. The men would be moving now, shadows in the darkness, slipping pamphlets under doors into milk boxes, between fence slats. 4:30. Rosa stood to make coffee, then sat back down. No fire meant no coffee. Nothing that might suggest they were awake, watching, waiting. 5 o'clock. First gray light touched the mountains. Somewhere in town, early risers would be stirring, ranchers heading to their barns, shopkeepers preparing to open. The first rider came at 5:30, horse lathered despite the cool morning. Sam Martinez, one of the ranchers who'd lost a cousin in the mines. He didn't dismount, just called from the gate. "It's done. Every house, every business." His grin split his weathered face. "Even stuck some to the church door and the outhouse behind the saloon." He rode off before Mary could respond. More riders came over the next hour, each with a report. No one caught, no one seen. 500 pamphlets distributed before the town woke. Elijah returned at 7, coming in the front door like he'd just stepped out to check the horses. His face revealed nothing, but Mary saw the satisfaction in how he moved, purposeful and sure. "Well, town's about to explode." He accepted the coffee Rosa offered, now that they could light the stove. "Saw Mrs. Henderson reading one on her porch. She was crying." Mrs. Henderson, whose son died in the number 3 shaft, the same shaft that killed Thomas. 8 o'clock. The sun climbed higher, warming the valley. Through the window, Mary watched the road, waiting for something, though she wasn't sure what. It came at 8:30. Dust cloud from the south, moving fast. Not one rider, many. She counted 6, maybe 7, riding hard toward town. "Brackenridge's men," Rosa said, "coming from his ranch." They'd see the pamphlets now spreading through town like fire through dry grass. They'd try to collect them, burn them, deny them, but there were too many. Hayes had made sure of that. 9 o'clock brought another rider, the boy who'd carried messages before, but riding a different horse, a better one. "Mr. Hayes says come to town, both of you. Says you need to see this." Mary looked at Elijah. He was already reaching for his rifle. "Could be a trap," Rosa warned. "Could be, but I don't think so." Elijah helped Mary into her coat. Sarah's coat, really. Brown wool that had been packed away in cedar. Hayes wouldn't risk the boy. They rode together on the wagon, Elijah's rifle across his knees, Rosa's shotgun hidden under the seat. The road to town had never seemed longer. Every shadow could hide Cole's men. Every rider in the distance made Mary's chest tight. But the riders they passed weren't hiding. They rode openly, pamphlets clutched in their hands, faces angry or shocked or satisfied, depending on which side of Brackenridge's money they stood. The town square was chaos. People filled the street in front of the general store. Mary had never seen so many together except for the 4th of July celebration. But this was no celebration. Men shouted, women cried, children stood wide-eyed as their parents read Thomas's evidence aloud. Hayes's careful printing covered both sides of each pamphlet. The survey maps had been recreated by hand, showing the true ore deposits versus the false ones. The forged assay reports side by side with the real ones. At the bottom, the list of dead miners with dates of their accidents. "They knew!" A woman's voice rose above the crowd. Mrs. Baxter, whose husband Frank died 2 months ago. "They knew the whole shaft was rich, and they killed him for it." Brackenridge's men were trying to collect the pamphlets, grabbing them from people's hands. But for every one they took, 3 more appeared. People had made copies already, passing them hand to hand. "Lies!" One of Brackenridge's men, Mary recognized him from the ranch visit, stood on a crate. "All lies made up by a bitter widow." Then let her speak, someone shouted from the crowd. Let's hear what she has to say. The crowd turned, searching. Mary shrank back in the wagon seat, but it was too late. Someone had seen her. There's Mrs. Morrison. The crowd surged toward the wagon. Hands reached out, not threatening but desperate, wanting truth, wanting answers. Please, an old miner grabbed the wagon's side. My boy worked that shaft. Did they really cut the beams? Mary looked at the faces surrounding her, weathered, worn, grieving. These people had lost sons, husbands, brothers. They deserved truth. She stood in the wagon bed, legs shaking. The crowd quieted. My husband found saw marks on the support beams. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. Someone cut them partway through, enough to weaken them, not enough to notice without looking close. A murmur ran through the crowd, anger building like storm clouds. That's enough. Victor Brackenridge himself pushed through the crowd, immaculate despite the chaos. His gray suit looked freshly pressed, gold watch chain glinting in the morning sun. Behind him came Sheriff Dobson and 2 deputies. This woman is obviously disturbed by grief, Brackenridge announced, making wild accusations without proof. The proof is in your own handwriting. Mary pulled out Thomas's original documents from her coat. Want to compare signatures, Mr. Brackenridge? His face went pale, then red. He turned to the sheriff. Arrest her, disturbing the peace. Sheriff Dobson stepped forward, hand on his pistol. The crowd tensed. Someone picked up a rock. That's when they heard it. Thunder, but not from the sky, from the road. A column of riders appeared through the dust, 20 men, maybe more, riding in formation. At their head rode a man Mary didn't recognize. Tall, weathered, wearing a long black coat despite the heat. Something glinted on his chest, a badge, a federal marshal's star. The column stopped between the crowd and Brackenridge's men. The marshal surveyed the scene, the angry crowd, the pamphlets scattered like leaves, Brackenridge's red face, Mary standing in the wagon bed. Victor Brackenridge. His voice carried authority like a weight. Who's asking? Though Brackenridge's voice had lost its confidence. James Cartwright, federal marshal. I have a warrant for your arrest. He pulled papers from his coat. Also warrants for Judge McKenna, Sheriff Dobson, and Governor Patterson. The crowd had gone completely silent. Even the dogs stopped barking. On what charges? Brackenridge tried to sound indignant, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Murder, conspiracy, fraud. Cartwright's voice never rose, but each word hit like a hammer. The evidence has been forwarded to Washington. The Attorney General is very interested. You can't. This is territorial jurisdiction. Mining claims are federal jurisdiction. Murder for profit crosses state lines. Cartwright nodded to his men. Take him. 2 marshals dismounted, moving toward Brackenridge. He backed away, looking to Sheriff Dobson for help. But Dobson had his own problems. Another marshal had him in irons already. This is a mistake, Brackenridge said as the shackles closed around his wrists. I have lawyers. I have friends in Washington. Your friends in Washington are being arrested as we speak. Cartwright turned to the crowd. Anyone else involved in this conspiracy has one chance. Come forward now, cooperate fully, and the court might show mercy. One of Brackenridge's bookkeepers stepped forward, face pale. I have ledgers, hidden. I can show you everything. Then another man, and another. Like a dam breaking, the conspiracy collapsed. Mary sank back onto the wagon seat. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Elijah's arm came around her shoulders, steady and warm. It's over, he said quietly. But Cartwright was walking toward their wagon now, removing his hat. Up close she could see his eyes, gray as winter sky, but kind. This is Morrison. I'm sorry for your loss. Your husband was a brave man. You knew Thomas? We corresponded for months. He sent me copies of evidence, asked me to wait until he had everything. Cartwright's weathered face creased with regret. I waited too long. The governor, Patterson, Is he really being arrested? As we speak, federal troops took him at his mansion this morning. Cartwright looked at the documents in Mary's hands. I'll need those originals for the trial. Mary handed them over. Her fingers trembled as she released them. Thomas's work, finally in the right hands. There'll be a trial? Elijah asked. In Denver, federal court, away from local influence. Cartwright studied Mary's face. We'll need your testimony, Mrs. Morrison. You're the only witness to what your husband found. When? 2 months, maybe 3. You'll be under federal protection until then. I'll stay at the ranch with Mr. Ransom. Cartwright's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded. I'll post men in town. First sign of trouble, send word. He mounted his horse. Around them, his men were loading prisoners into a wagon. Brackenridge sat shackled between Sheriff Dobson and Judge McKenna, his perfect suit covered in dust. As the federal marshals prepared to leave, Cole Hutchins broke from the crowd, running for his horse. One marshal raised his rifle, but Cole was already mounted, spurring hard toward the hills. Let him go, Cartwright said. He won't get far. But Mary saw something in Cole's eyes as he fled. Not defeat. Something else. A promise that this wasn't over. The lawyer's pen scratched across paper, each stroke deliberate and final. Mary sat across the desk from him, hands folded in her lap, watching September sunlight catch the dust motes floating between them. Through the window behind him, she could see Elijah waiting with the wagon, his hat tipped against the afternoon glare. Sign here, Mrs. Morrison. The lawyer pointed to a line at the bottom of the document. This acknowledges receipt of the full compensation from the seized assets. The pen felt too heavy in her fingers. All those deaths, Thomas, the miners, reduced to numbers on a page. The federal government had seized Brackenridge Mining's assets, divided them among the victims' families. The amount was substantial, more money than Thomas could have earned in a lifetime. She signed her name, Mary Morrison, still using his name, even now, 3 months after the trial that had sent Brackenridge to federal prison for 20 years. The bank draft will be available tomorrow. The lawyer blotted her signature, then applied his seal. Red wax dripped onto the paper, spreading slowly. You're a wealthy woman now, Mrs. Morrison. Wealthy. The word sat strange in her mouth, like trying to speak around a stone. Outside, Elijah helped her onto the wagon seat. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary, warm through the fabric of her dress. All settled? Yes. They rode through town in comfortable silence. People nodded as they passed, respectful now, where before they'd looked away. The widow Morrison had brought down an empire of corruption. The story had spread through 3 territories. At the ranch, Rosa had coffee waiting and fresh bread with butter. Mary pulled the bank draft from her pocket, setting it on the kitchen table between them. I want you to have half, she said to Elijah. He didn't look up from his coffee. No. You risked everything. I said no. He stood, chair scraping against the floor. That money came from your husband's death. It's yours. He walked out, the screen door closing firm behind him. Mary stared at the draft, all those zeros that meant nothing compared to what she'd lost. She folded it carefully and tucked it into the sugar tin on the shelf. October arrived with cold mornings and golden afternoons. The wheat needed harvesting. Mary worked beside Elijah in the fields, learning the rhythm of the scythe. The wooden handle raised blisters that burst and bled, then formed again, then finally hardened into calluses. Her skin turned brown from the sun. Freckles appeared across her nose, something Thomas would have fussed about, worried about her complexion. But Thomas wasn't here to fuss. In the evenings, they sat on the porch, not together in the rockers, she in the doorway, he on the steps. The distance between them precise, measured, but shrinking by degrees. Sarah loved October, Elijah said one night, watching stars appear in the cooling sky. The way the light changed, said it made everything look like honey. Thomas preferred spring. Mary pulled her shawl tighter. New beginnings, he called it. always planning what came next. They sat with their ghosts between them, comfortable in the shared silence of loss. November brought the first hard freeze. Ice crystals formed on the water troughs each morning. Mary learned to break them with the handle of the feed bucket, learned to carry hot water from the kitchen to thaw the pump. She found Elijah in the barn one afternoon, working leather with oil and saddle soap. His hands moved in steady circles, working the oil deep into the grain. "Teach me," she said. He looked up, surprised, then shifted on the bench, making room. The leather felt stiff under her fingers. He showed her how to work in small sections, patient circles that brought out the leather's natural color. Their hands touched as he adjusted her grip on the cloth. Neither pulled away. "Like this," he said, voice rougher than usual. Steady pressure. December came with snow. They spent evenings by the fire, Rosa knitting in her chair while Mary read aloud from Elijah's books. Tales of other places, other times, while the wind rattled the windows. Elijah worked at the table, knife peeling curls of pine from something he kept hidden under a cloth. "What are you making?" "Not ready yet." He covered it with his hands when she tried to look closer. Christmas passed quiet. Mary made sugar cookies from Rosa's recipe. Elijah brought in a small pine tree, which they decorated with strings of dried berries and paper stars Rosa cut from old newspaper. January. The trial verdict came by telegram. Brackenridge, guilty on all counts. 20 years hard labor. Governor Patterson the same. The others got various sentences, 5 years, 10 years. Justice, the law called it. It didn't bring anyone back. "Cole Hutchins was never caught," Mary said, folding the telegram. "No." Elijah stared out the window at the snow-covered fields. "But he knows better than to come back here." February thaw came early. Water ran from the roof in steady streams. The yard turned to mud that sucked at their boots. Mary found the first green shoots pushing through the snow beside the porch, crocuses, purple and white. March winds scoured the valley clean. They worked together mending fences, Mary holding posts while Elijah strung wire. Her hands had grown strong over the winter, capable of real work. April brought rain. The garden needed planting. Mary knelt in the dark soil, pressing seeds into the earth. Corn, beans, squash. Rosa supervised from the porch, calling out instructions about spacing and depth. Elijah appeared beside her, something hidden in his cupped hands. "Been working on this all winter," he said. A small wooden box, carved with simple flowers. The lid opened smooth on tiny brass hinges. Inside, nestled in a piece of blue fabric, lay a gold ring. Plain, unadorned. Perfect. "Mary," he swallowed, throat working. "This ranch hasn't been... I haven't been..." He stopped, tried again. "Will you stay? Not for safety, not because you need to. For this." His gesture took in the garden, the house, the land spreading under the April sky. Himself, kneeling in the mud, dirt under his fingernails, hope and fear mixed in his eyes. "Yes." His hands shook as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He must have measured while she slept, or asked Rosa. The gold caught the morning light. They married in May. Sam Hayes printed the announcement in his rebuilt newspaper office. The church filled with people, ranchers, miners' widows, even Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house, who brought a quilt she'd made herself. Mary wore a simple cotton dress with tatted lace at the collar, made by Rosa over the winter months. Elijah had trimmed his beard and wore his one good shirt. When Reverend Mills pronounced them married, Elijah's kiss was brief, careful, his lips chapped from the sun. The reception was held at the ranch. Tables borrowed from neighbors stretched across the yard. Food appeared as if by magic. Mrs. Martinez's tamales, Mrs. Baxter's fried chicken, 3 different kinds of pie. The women who'd lost husbands in the mines came together, bringing what they could, their acceptance more valuable than any wedding gift. That night, in what was now their room, Mary unpacked the last item from her carpet bag, Thomas's photograph. She placed it on the mantel, beside the daguerreotype of Sarah. "They should be remembered," she said. Elijah nodded. "They should." June passed in garden work and cattle drives, July in preserving the early vegetables, August in preparing for harvest.
The rhythms of ranch life, but different now. Shared work, shared meals, shared bed. Mary's body began to change in subtle ways, a fullness, a tenderness that made her pause while hanging wash. September again, 1 year since Elijah had found her by the road. Mary stood at the kitchen window, watching him work with a young horse in the corral. Her hand rested on her belly, feeling the flutter of movement within. "December, baby," Rosa predicted. "A Christmas child." Sam Hayes rode up with mail from town, a letter from the federal prosecutor. Brackenridge's appeal had been denied. He would serve his full sentence. There was also a package from Denver, from Cartwright. Inside, Thomas's surveying compass, recovered from evidence. "Thought you should have this," the note read, "for your children to know their father was an honest man." Mary held the compass, its brass weight familiar in her palm. The needle swung and settled, pointing true north, always pointing home. Elijah climbed the porch steps, boots heavy with the day's work. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. Together they watched the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky purple and gold. The same cottonwoods where he'd found her swayed in the evening breeze, leaves just beginning to turn. "Regrets?" he asked. She thought of Thomas, of the life they'd planned, of the children they'd never had, the years they'd never share. Then she thought of this, Elijah's solid presence, Rosa humming in the kitchen, the child growing within her. "No," she said. "No regrets." The baby moved again, stronger this time. Elijah's hand joined hers on her belly, feeling the life they'd created from the ashes of loss. "Sarah would have loved this," he said quietly. "Thomas, too." They stood together as darkness gathered, the ghosts of their past lives settled and quiet. The ranch spread around them, garden heavy with produce, cattle drowsing in the pasture, Rosa's lamplight warm in the kitchen window. Life, stubborn and insistent, growing toward tomorrow. I told you this story the way my grandmother Mary told it to me, sitting on her porch while the Colorado sun set behind those same mountains. She lived to 93, raised 6 children on that ranch with Grandpa Elijah. The December baby she carried? That was my mother, born healthy and strong on Christmas Eve, 1883. Grandma always said the hardest battles aren't fought with guns, but with courage to keep living when everything seems lost. She and Grandpa Elijah didn't save each other. That's the Hollywood version. They simply chose to stay present, while each found their own way back to life. The ranch still stands, you know. My cousin runs it now. Those cottonwoods by the road are enormous, and every spring, purple crocuses push through the snow. Sometimes I stand there and think about second chances, about how love can grow in ground that seemed too damaged to nurture anything. That's what Grandma wanted us to understand, that broken doesn't mean finished. Disclaimer. This story was inspired by historical accounts of mining corruption in the Colorado Territory during the 1880s, created solely for entertainment purposes. This work does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence, corruption, or harmful behavior depicted within the narrative. All characters and events are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events from the historical period is purely coincidental. The story aims to explore themes of resilience, justice, and healing within a historical fiction framework while maintaining respect for the real struggles faced by mining families in the American West.